In the heart of an ancient forest renowned for its mysterious disappearances and haunting legends, Eric Orlock unloaded his car, placed his bags, pitched his tent, and embarked on his camping journey. As he delved deeper into the forest, towering trees loomed over him, accompanied by snapping twigs and crunching leaves beneath his feet, each step a testament to his fearless spirit. His solitary trek continued until rustling leaves behind him caught his attention. "Who's there?" he interjected, pausing for a response. After a moment of silence, the rustling resumed a few feet away in a different direction. "Okay, now who was that?" he stuttered, his heart pounding as another sound of a twig snapping echoed in the distance. He bolted away, tripping over roots and rocks along a path meandering through the thick forest. He finally arrived at a secluded cabin nestled against a colossal mountain, its peak vanishing into the clouds. Approaching the cabin, he tapped on the screen door, calling, "Hello?" Finding it unlocked but empty, he retreated into the dirty, old, abandoned, haunted house. Nearby, a gaping cave entrance beckoned, its walls adorned with glowing red cryptic symbols hinting at forgotten rituals or ancient inhabitants, evoking a sense of mystery waiting to be unraveled within its depths. As Eric delved deeper into the cave, the air grew increasingly damp, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of dirt and blood. Eerie echoes of strange sounds permeated the cavern, and unsettling signs hinted at an ominous presence lurking nearby. Suddenly, a swarm of bloodthirsty bats descended upon him, causing him to stumble deeper into the cave and a mass of cobwebs. Frantically swatting at the bats, Eric suffered from scratches and bites from the chaotic encounter. Meanwhile, in another chamber of the cave, an ancient man-bat, dormant for weeks, is awakened and disturbed by the commotion. Enraged by the intrusion, it unleashes a brutal attack on the invading bats, draining them of their blood one by one. Then he sets his eyes on the wandering intruder, Eric. Caught amid the escalating chaos, feared for his life. The man-bat caught the scent of Eric's blood on the air, its predatory instincts instantly aroused. Turning its gaze towards Eric, the vampire cast its mesmerizing glamour upon him, presenting a fateful ultimatum. Join the ranks of the creatures of the night, or face a life-draining fate. In a hauntingly poignant tone, the man-bat recounted its tragic origins, a cursed existence inflicted by a vengeful witch. It spoke of a past shadowed by loss, narrating the brutal demise of its loved ones at the hands of an enraged mob seeking retribution for its livestock killings. Despite the dark gift being rejected by many, leading to their demise at its hands, Eric expressed indifference, citing his fractured family life as motivation for embracing this new opportunity, akin to a real job. Ensnared by the hypnotic allure of the man-bat, Eric succumbed to its offer. As he tasted the dark elixir of vampiric blood, a surge of newfound power coursed through his veins, initiating an unfathomable transformation. Thus was born Nocturnal, the creature of the night with super strength, perfect recall, stretchy claws, and an insatiable thirst for blood. Eric Orlock is troubled by the spooky underworld he recently discovered. Vampires dry up in the sun, but Nocturnal is half dead, so he can walk in the sun all day. He gets tired quickly, so he only works 6 hours and sleeps before his night shift. He needs to steal a police scanner to learn more about what's happening. He checks the scene out and then turns into a ghost to go inside the police car, and then becomes his usual self to snatch it. Nocturnal gets caught trying to steal the police scanner from a car, and the officers in the diner brandish their weapons at him and shoot. But Nocturnal realizes he has new powers, like being too dead to be hurt and able to slow time down, so he easily can escape from the scene. The police are confused by these strange crimes and try to catch up with Nocturnal, but he escapes. Returning home, Nocturnal gives the scanner to his tech-savvy friend Desmond O'Brien to install in his muscle car. Nocturnal eavesdrops on police transmissions and waits for clues. He learns about strange symbols and rituals, causing fear and chaos in the city. These events draw Nocturnal deeper into the dangerous supernatural world, where he has to fight 4 witches. Damien Hex, a wizard known for his curses. Serena, a dark enchantress with one arm known for reanimating the undead. Xander, a warlock known for his blood magic and blood sacrifices. And Sylvia, the main sorceress, known for using digits and calculations. Each ritual leads to an encounter with a big bad, and Nocturnal thwarts them all in 3 hours. Around 8 p.m., feeling hungry, Nocturnal parks his muscle car near the right lane of a deserted road. With a glance around, he dashes into the nearby woods, his senses keenly attuned to find easy prey. Amidst the foliage, he stumbles upon a rabbit and swiftly picks it up, intending to satisfy his hunger. However, upon closer inspection, he notices a strange scent emanating from the rabbit, making him hesitate. Deciding against consuming it, he casually tosses the rabbit. To his astonishment, it morphs into a bat that flutters near him like a boomerang before reverting to its original form. Intrigued by this unexpected turn of events, Nocturnal approaches the rabbit cautiously. Rather than fleeing, the rabbit hops closer, a curious chomping at him. This gesture hints at a potential bond. "What are you?" Nocturnal muses aloud, surprised. He gently lifts the shape-shifting rabbit by the neck and places it in the passenger seat of his car. "You're gonna be my new friend," he declares with a smirk as he slams the door shut and slides over the car's hood to the driver's side. With a swift climb through the open window, he takes control of his car. Gurgle. Nocturnal's stomach begs for nourishment, and then he drives to a hospital to steal drawn blood samples from the lab to fuel up quickly. Throughout the late night in the dark city, a man named Marcus Masters lived a life steeped in depression and despair. Tonight, he wandered down a shadowy alley, the sole figure in the gloom. His multi-family duplex had recently burned down, and without his paycheck, he couldn't afford even a motel. His life had always been a string of misfortunes, bullied by everyone, shunned by society, and recently kicked out by his mother. Despite barely scraping by, Marcus somehow managed to survive, though his existence was a constant struggle. Just when things seemed like they couldn't get any worse, Marcus contracted a flesh-eating disease that caused his body to wither and decay. His eyes became sunken, and his flesh turned crispy and dehydrated over time. On this particularly grim night, the city was on edge due to reports of missing people and a viral infection dubbed the Vampire Apocalypse. The infection left victims in an unconscious state, and fear drove everyone into isolation. As Marcus sought shelter, maybe in a car he could break into or through an old friend's kindness, he was desperate. Walking in the gloomy rain, he encountered a strange figure near an escape ladder, a mysterious woman prowling in the shadows. She was a member of a vampire gang, always on the hunt for prey and the secrets to immortality. Seeing Marcus as an easy target, she approached with an alluring charm. But as she drew closer, her keen senses detected something amiss. Listening to his erratic heartbeat, she realized he was dying from a disease that made his blood worthless. Moved by an unexpected pity, she offered Marcus a choice. She could end his suffering with a swift death, or she could give him a chance to embrace the darkness and gain the powers of the beast. Desperate to escape his torment, Marcus accepted the offer. The vampiress performed a forbidden ritual, thinking her blood might heal him. Instead, it bound him to his curse, amplifying his disease. The transformation granted him immense power and eternal life, but the withering disease intensified, leaving him in constant pain and torment. Now known as the Maniac, Marcus Masters became a tormented soul, his mind fractured by relentless pain. He roamed the streets as a creature of the night, driven mad and causing mayhem wherever he went. His newfound abilities, including the ability to hear people's intentions, only deepened his descent into madness. Marcus the Maniac had jerks and spasms. He was a tragic figure. A once desperate man turned into a nightmare, now forever in search of a fix that might never exist, unleashing chaos by attacking victims in the night. Meanwhile, Nocturnal was unaware of the new threat and was currently in the parking lot of an arena in the middle of a brawl. He broke an aggressive tailgater's arm by slamming it shut on his shoulder. "Get out the cooler!" he mocked in a demonic tone. Nearby security blared their alarm, and Nocturnal launched himself into the air, turning into a swarm of bats. The tailgater freaked out as his gang helped him up, calling Nocturnal a leech. Reforming into his human form, Nocturnal used spirit kinesis to float gracefully into the air. As he soared above the clouds, he felt a sense of serenity and freedom, almost as if he could close his eyes and sleep in peace. But peace was short-lived. A sudden disturbance pulled him down. Below, in a shadowy alley near his apartment complex, he spotted a gang of 6 vampires, their presence radiating evil energy. Realizing the danger, Nocturnal landed to confront them. The vampire gang circled him, fangs bared. One vampire lunged, but Nocturnal countered with a knee to the face, shattering his teeth. Another vampire approached, and Nocturnal extended his claws, slicing the vampire's abdomen open and piercing his heart. The third vampire, an old man, used blood manipulation to drain Nocturnal's energy. Nocturnal transformed into a swarm of bats, devouring the old man until only ash remained. A fourth vampire tried to ambush him, but Nocturnal, alerted by spirit kinesis, slowed down time and easily dodged the attack, slashing her with precise strikes. 2 more vampires attacked simultaneously, but Nocturnal spread his wings and leaped into the air, evading their assault. He manipulated the shadows to bind them, then drained their blood. As Nocturnal scanned the alley, all 6 vampires lay defeated. A young, frightened vampire emerged from the shadows. Nocturnal moved to strike, but hesitated, recognizing the innocence in the young vampire. "Hey, you're that kid! We live in the same apartment complex!" The kid shyly turned into a ghost and darted through a brick wall. Nocturnal, determined not to lose him, transformed into a wraith-like form and gave chase, phasing through the wall and emerging in a narrow back street. The young vampire ran frantically, his footsteps echoing in the deserted alley. Nocturnal used his night vision to track the boy through the winding streets. The kid, desperate and terrified, slipped into a darkened building. Nocturnal followed, his movements swift and silent. Inside, the building was a maze of abandoned rooms and narrow corridors. The boy's ghostly form flitted from shadow to shadow, trying to lose his pursuer. Drawing on his shadow manipulation, Nocturnal created tendrils that snaked through the darkness, reaching out to ensnare the boy. Sensing the danger, the young vampire shifted back to his human form and sprinted down a flight of stairs. Nocturnal followed, using his ability to slow down time, each step a measured stride as he closed the distance. The chase led them to an old, decrepit basement. The young vampire, cornered and out of breath, turned to face Nocturnal with wide, fearful eyes. Nocturnal approached slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Listen, kid, I'm not here to hurt you," Nocturnal said, his voice calm and steady. "You don't have to be scared. I just want to help." The boy's breathing slowed, and he took a hesitant step back. "Why? Why would you help me?" "Because you're like me," Nocturnal replied. "But you didn't choose this life, and you deserve a chance to learn how to control your powers. Together, We can figure this out." The boy, still wary, nodded slowly. Nocturnal extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, the young vampire took it. "We need to keep this a secret," Nocturnal said, his voice firm. "No one can know about you, not your friends, not your dad. We'll figure it out, and I'll keep you safe." As they left the basement, the city loomed around them, filled with dangers both known and unknown. Nocturnal now had a cool new pet and an ally to protect. This was a new responsibility that weighed heavily on his shoulders. The night was far from over, and with the maniac on the loose, lurking in the shadows, who knows what's next? Like two gargoyles, Nocturnal and his newfound apprentice sat perched on top of the rooftops, waiting for a new source of terror, discussing their upbringing and getting to know one another. It gets late, and the assistant gets up to leave. "I didn't catch your name, kid," Nocturnal scoffs. "Oh, it's Sam Elliott," he mutters, and takes a leap of faith off the building, disappearing in a swipe. Seconds later, you can see the swarm of bats fluttering in the distance. Time passes, and Nocturnal receives a phone call from a random number. He quickly searches the area code online, and then picks up the phone. "Hello, who's this?" "Took you long enough to reply, my young dominion. It's me, you know, your master, Ollie," the elder vampire declares carelessly. Who?" Nocturnal summoned more shadows, wrapping them tightly around the maniac until he was completely immobilized. With a final effort, he secured the maniac in another hidden location, ensuring he couldn't harm anyone else. "I'll find you and get you back for this. I will make you pay for this. You will feel pain forever." Nocturnal couldn't help but feel bad for him. Seconds pass by, and Nocturnal finally figures out the voice's identity. "Oh, tits, it's you, Ollie. How'd you get my number anyway?" "A man with my power knows it's not hard to find you, and your information is easy to search." "I can get information from anywhere," Ollie replies. "Anyways, I've been through a lot of BS since our last encounter. Is there a place we can talk about this in person?" Nocturnal complains. "Sure, meet me by the water tower that resides near the church in the Skyline district." The elder vampire hangs up the phone. Bloop. "Hello? Are you there?" The night sky loomed over the city, dark clouds threatening to unleash a storm. Nocturnal landed softly near the water tower in the Skyline district, his eyes scanning the dimly lit surroundings. The distant sounds of the city faded into the background as he focused on the ancient figure standing by the tower. "Ollie!" Nocturnal called out, his voice steady. Ollie turned to face him, his presence exuding an aura of ancient power. "Nocturnal, it's been a while. I see you've been busy." Nocturnal nodded, the tension between them palpable. "You mentioned you've been through a lot. What happened?" Ollie sighed, his expression darkening. "I encountered a creature, a lunatic, a brute, a bloodthirsty hunter, a vampire so far gone in his madness that he no longer thinks. He only kills." Nocturnal's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Ollie's gaze grew distant, as if recalling a nightmare. "He's pure rage and hunger. There's nothing left of the man he once was. He needs to be stopped." Determination flashed in Nocturnal's eyes. "What do you suggest?" "You need to drain yourself of blood," Ollie replied, his voice firm. "Embrace your vampire nature, but don't let it consume you. And there's another matter, your love interest. You need to turn her immortal, make her join the creatures of the night." Nocturnal was taken aback. "Why?" Eric and Hazel grew up together, and their families lived in the same neighborhood. They were best friends, inseparable from a young age. As they grew older, their friendship blossomed into something more. But Eric knew that he could never be with Hazel, for he was a vampire, and she was a human. "Because the lunatic is a problem that can't be solved with brute force alone," Ollie explained. "He will target those you care about to get to you. By turning her, you ensure her safety and give yourself a reason to maintain control. Conflicted emotions played across Nocturnal's face. I don't know if I can do that. It's a difficult decision, but it's one you need to make, Ollie said, his tone serious. Sis. For her sake, and yours. Suddenly, a movement in the shadows caught Nocturnal's attention. Emerging from the darkness was a figure, eyes wild with fury, partially obscured by the dim light. "Help me! I need blood!" the figure growled, his voice filled with madness. Nocturnal stepped forward, his determination hardening. "Ollie, get out of here! I'll handle this!" Ollie nodded and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Nocturnal to face the maniac alone. The maniac charged with wild fury, his movements erratic and animalistic. Nocturnal dodged and blocked, using his surroundings to his advantage. The fight was intense, the ferocity of the maniac's attacks pushing Nocturnal to his limits. With a heavy blow, the maniac knocked Nocturnal to the ground and pounced on him, his eyes filled with bloodlust. They struggled on the ground, the maniac's strength overwhelming, but Nocturnal's shadows began to bind him, pulling him off and pinning him to the ground. "Who are you?" Nocturnal struggled to ask, his voice strained. The maniac roared, struggling against the shadows, but unable to break free. "I'm the maniac, the true creature of the night!" Determination and pity mingled in Nocturnal's eyes as he tightened the shadowy binds. The maniac's struggles weakened, his fury giving way to exhaustion. "This fight is just the beginning," Nocturnal muttered to himself. He stood over the defeated maniac, knowing that his journey was far from over. The city lights reflected in his eyes as he looked up, the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him. The night was far from over. The battle had only just begun. "I just need a pint of blood. I can sense it kilometers away. Help me live a little longer. Transfuse your blood. I'll be forever in debt to you." Ignoring the maniac's plea, Nocturnal secured him in a hidden location, ensuring he couldn't harm anyone else. His next mission was to find the source of this madness. Ollie had hinted at an ancient evil lurking beneath the city, in the abandoned train system the council forgot to finish building inside the catacombs, where sunken, ghoulish vampires lay dormant. As Nocturnal ventured deeper into the subways of the city, the air grew colder, and the oppressive darkness closed in around him. He navigated the labyrinthine tunnels with ease, his heightened senses guiding him. Eric watched Hazel grow into a beautiful and intelligent woman as the years passed. He loved her more than anything, but knew their love was forbidden. He tried to keep his distance, but Hazel was persistent. She refused to give up on their love. Eric's enemies grew more powerful, and the threats against Hazel's life became more severe. Eric knew that he had to make a choice. He could either turn her into a vampire, granting her eternal life, but also condemning her to a life of darkness, or he could let her go, knowing that she would eventually die, and he would be left alone once again. Ultimately, Eric decides he has to turn Hazel into a vampire. He does it not out of selfishness, but out of love. He wants to protect and keep her from the dangers lurking in the shadows. In the heart of the city, chaos reigns. Vampires, emboldened by their growing numbers, launch a series of coordinated attacks on human gangs, police officers, and brute humans. The streets are filled with the sounds of gunfire, screams, and the clash of steel. Nocturnal, the true creature of the night, watches from the shadows. He knows that he must intervene, but he must do so carefully. He cannot reveal his true nature to the humans for fear of causing mass panic. As the vampires close in on a group of police officers, Nocturnal steps out of the shadows. His eyes glow with an otherworldly light, and his voice is commanding. "Stop!" he orders the vampires. The vampires turn to face him, their eyes filled with hatred and hunger. But Nocturnal is not afraid. He summons his powers of shadow manipulation, creating tendrils of darkness that wrap around the vampires, binding them in place. The police officers, grateful for the intervention, begin to retreat. But the vampires are not so easily defeated. They break free of the shadows, their claws extended, their fangs bared. Nocturnal knows that he must end this quickly. He summons his spirit kinesis to create a powerful blast of energy that knocks the vampires back. He then uses his glamour to confuse and disorient them, making them easy targets for his attacks. As the vampires struggle to regain their senses, Nocturnal unleashes his full power. He turns into a swarm of bats, his form shifting and twisting in the air. He uses his night vision to track the vampires, perfect recall to anticipate their movements, and stretchy claws to strike with deadly precision. The vampires fall one by one, their bodies dissolving into dust. Nocturnal stands victorious, his heart heavy with the knowledge that this is just the beginning of a new era of darkness. But he knows that he must continue to fight to protect the city and its people from the horrors that lurk in the shadows. Eric's nemesis, the maniac, a vampire consumed by his madness, learns of Eric's love for Hazel. Driven by jealousy and hatred, the maniac attacks Hazel, killing her in cold blood. Above the clouds, terrifying screeches echo through the night. A monstrous bat terrorizes those unfortunate enough to find themselves on the rooftops. Nocturnal, the true creature of the night, stands ready to confront this menace. Nocturnal glides silently onto the rooftop, blending into the shadows. His eyes gleam with determination as he spots the giant bat perched on a ledge, wings outstretched and ready to pounce on its next victim. With a loud screech, the bat turns and lunges at Nocturnal, its wings beating furiously. The creature's claws slashed through the air, aiming for Nocturnal's throat. Nocturnal dodges swiftly, rolling to the side and coming up on one knee. He turns into a swarm, momentarily disorienting the man-bat. Using this distraction, Nocturnal leaped forward, delivering a powerful kick to the bat's midsection. Recovering quickly, the giant bat takes to the air, circling above Nocturnal. Undeterred, Nocturnal uses his stretchy claws to catch the gigantic bat by the ankle. He pulls with all of his strength, yanking the creature back down to the rooftop. The two engage in a fierce hand-to-hand battle. Nocturnal uses his agility to evade the giant bat's claws, precisely striking the creature's weak points. The bat roars in pain, its attacks becoming more erratic. Nocturnal finally gains the upper hand and entangles the bat's wings, rendering it unable to fly. With a swift motion, Nocturnal injects pentobarbital into the blood to euthanize the creature, causing it to collapse to the ground, subdued at last. As Nocturnal grapples with his newfound responsibilities, a new threat emerges. A mysterious figure known as the Insomniac appears, a clone of Nocturnal created by a rogue scientist. Unlike Nocturnal, the Insomniac is a mentally challenged villain who misuses his powers bashfully. The Insomniac challenges Nocturnal to a duel to prove his superiority and take over Nocturnal's territory. The two engage in a fierce battle, with the Insomniac using his powers to gain the upper hand. As the battle rages on, Nocturnal realizes that the Insomniac's powers are unstable, and he is slowly deteriorating as time progresses. In a final, desperate move, Nocturnal uses his shadow manipulation to trap the Insomniac in a spirit-kinetic dimension, where he cannot harm anyone. With the Insomniac defeated, Nocturnal realizes the true nature of his powers a bit more. In the dark, a new threat emerges. Pablo Gamble, or Goose, is a bald man created in a lab. His true form is a liquid metal, capable of shape-shifting into any form he desires. His mission is to eliminate monsters and creatures of the night. Nocturnal, the true creature of the night, senses a disturbance in the city. He follows the trail of chaos and destruction left by Goose. The two finally meet in a deserted alleyway, surrounded by the flickering neon lights of the city. Goose, in his human form, smirks at Nocturnal. "You're the infamous creature of the night! I expected more!" he taunts, his voice dripping with malice. Nocturnal remains stoic, his eyes fixed on his opponent. "And you're looking like the lab experiment gone wrong," he retorts. The fight begins. Goose transforms into his liquid metal form, his body shimmering in the dim light. He charges at Nocturnal, his arms morphing into sickle-like blades. Nocturnal dodges the attack, his movements fluid and graceful. He retaliates with a flurry of punches and kicks, his fists and feet connecting with Goose's metal body. Goose is unfazed. He transforms his arms into mantis blades and lunges at Nocturnal, slicing through the air with deadly precision. Nocturnal barely manages to evade the attacks, his agility and reflexes keeping him one step ahead. Nocturnal notices a faint glow beneath Goose's skin as the fight rages on. He realizes that Goose is a robot, his liquid metal exterior merely a disguise. Nocturnal uses shadow manipulation to create tendrils that wrap around Goose, immobilizing him. Goose struggles against the shadows, his liquid metal body morphing and twisting. But Nocturnal's grip is too strong. He summons his powers of darkness, using them to create a powerful electric current that courses through Goose's body. The liquid metal cyborg convulses as the electricity surges through him. His body begins to malfunction, sparks flying from his joints. With a final scream, Goose collapses, and his liquid metal form solidifies into a lifeless heap. Nocturnal stands over his fallen foe, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He knows that this is just the beginning of a new threat, but for now, the city is safe from the monster that was Goose. In the end, Eric decides to let Hazel go. He knows it is the only way to keep her from his enemies. But fate has other plans. Eric's nemesis, the maniac, a vampire consumed by his madness, learns of Eric's love for Hazel. Driven by jealousy and hatred, the maniac attacks Hazel, killing her in cold blood. Eric is devastated by Hazel's death. He blames himself for not being able to protect her. But he knows that he must avenge her death. He vows to hunt down the maniac and make him pay for what he has done. Eric's pursuit of the maniac leads him on a dangerous journey through the city's dark underworld. He faces countless dangers, but is driven by his love for Hazel and his desire for revenge. In the end, Eric confronts the maniac. In a dimly lit laboratory, the mad scientist Dr. Victor Howell cackled maniacally as he injected a test subject with a mixture of vampire blood and wolf DNA. The room was filled with the eerie hum of machines and the occasional growl, whimper, or bark from the mutated creatures he kept in cages. Dr. Howell had been obsessed with finding a way to end the vampire apocalypse by creating synthetic blood, but his experiments had taken a dark turn. The vampire blood and the wolf DNA had made something far more dangerous than he could have imagined. One night, an enormous wolf named Fenrir was transformed in an unexplainable way, unlike any other. As the moon rose, Fenrir grew, his body twisting and contorting into something monstrous. Dr. Howell tried to put him down, but Fenrir was too powerful. The mad scientist was bitten, and as the infection spread, he realized that he was about to become the very thing he had been trying to control, the creature of the night. Meanwhile, in the city above, Nocturnal patrolled the streets. His heightened senses picked up on the chaos in the laboratory below. With a swift leap, he descended into the dark depths, ready to face whatever horrors awaited him. As Nocturnal entered the laboratory, he was greeted by the sight of Dr. Howl, now a fully transformed werewolf, locked in a fierce battle with Fenrir, who had grown to the size of a truck. The two beasts were locked in a deadly dance, their claws and fangs tearing through the air. Nocturnal knew he had to intervene. He joined the fight with speed and strength, using his vampire abilities to dodge the werewolves' attacks and strike back with deadly precision. The fight was a whirlwind of claws, fangs, and blood as the three combatants tore through the laboratory. In the end, Nocturnal emerged victorious. As he stood over the defeated werewolves, he realized that the true danger was not the creatures themselves, but the mad scientist who had created them. With a heavy heart, the aftermath brought unintended consequences. The transformed vampires, overwhelmed by bloodlust, turned into feral predators and ambushed the city. The city plunged into chaos as Nocturnal faced a dual threat: the bloodthirsty vampires and the remnants of the corporation's experiments. Nocturnal knew that he would have to end Dr. Howl's experiments once and for all. Nocturnal received intelligence about a cult's latest activities, including a series of brutal attacks on suspected vampires and other supernatural beings. Working closely with the police, Nocturnal planned a series of raids to dismantle the cult's operations and arrest its leaders. His primary target was the bishop, the embodiment of the church's extreme beliefs. The church was an ominous force lurking in the shadows of society. They operated to restore humanity to its pure state. Extreme human supremacist ideologies fueled their doctrine. Their hatred for supernatural beings was boundless, and they propagated hate speech with violent intolerance. Led by a charismatic and dangerous bishop, the church orchestrated campaigns of terror, targeting anyone they deemed non-human or corrupted. Their ultimate goal was to return the world to a perceived humane nature, free of supernatural entities. Disguised and moving silently through the shadows, Nocturnal gathered crucial information about their plans and the bishop's whereabouts. The meeting occurred in a cemetery lit by flickering torches that cast eerie shadows. As the bishop addressed his followers, Nocturnal signaled the police for a sudden raid. Chaos erupted as cult members resisted arrest, leading to a fierce battle. Following the raid, Nocturnal tracked the bishop to his secluded altar, a repurposed church on the city's outskirts. The church's elite fighters heavily guarded the lair, with his supernatural abilities and tactical acumen. Nocturnal bypassed the outer defenses and confronted the bishop in the inner sanctum. With the bishop defeated, the cult's structure began to collapse. However, the remaining members, driven to a frenzied state, refused to surrender. They rallied into an angry mob, chanting, "Burn him! Kill him!" as they hunted for Nocturnal and the police. The battle was over. The streets were littered with the remains of vampires' ashes, everyone's blood mixing with the rain that began to fall. Nocturnal stood amidst the wreckage, his breath heavy, his body aching from the night's relentless fight. He had saved the city from the cult and their monstrous horde, but at what cost? "What do you want, Ollie?" Nocturnal asked, his voice weary but defiant. Ollie stopped a few paces away. The faint sound of footsteps on wet pavement caught his attention. He turned to see Ollie, the elder vampire, approaching him slowly, deliberately. Nocturnal tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. "We fought side by side before. Why now?" "Does it matter?" Ollie replied. "It's simply how it must be." Without warning, Ollie lunged at Nocturnal, their conflict erupting brutally. Nocturnal fought with everything he had, but the elder vampire's strength and speed were overwhelming. Each strike, each counter, pushed him closer to his limit. The fight spilled into a nearby alley, their shadows flickering in the dim light. Nocturnal's vision blurred, his body growing weaker with each passing moment. Despite his efforts, Ollie seemed to anticipate every move, every attack. In a final, desperate attempt, Nocturnal lunged at Ollie, but the elder vampire was too quick. With a swift, merciless motion, Ollie plunged his fangs into Nocturnal's neck, draining his life force. Nocturnal's strength faded, his vision darkening as he collapsed to the ground. The city would mourn the loss of its hero, but Nocturnal's legend would endure. His sacrifice and bravery would inspire others to rise against the darkness. And though his life had ended, his spirit would remain a beacon of hope for those who would continue the fight.